My colleague, Dr. Jenks, is going to get us back on track, and it's always my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Kathy Jenks. I hired Kathy many, many years ago. She came here as an instructor, and so she is a perfect example of why we promote from within.
Good morning. So, with limited time, I just wanted to provide you all with status updates on where we are with developing our new list of peer and aspirant institutions, where we are with KPIs, and then give you some assessment updates. So behind me on the screen, you will see brand new, just revised yesterday after our meeting on Wednesday, a list of suggested peer and aspirant institutions for us moving forward with our new strategic plan and our new KPIs. So the purpose of peers and aspirants are to provide us an ability to benchmark to other institutions on a variety of different aspects of what we do. So we could benchmark on, say, enrollment, retention, graduation. You can benchmark on processes, which is one of the things that when people think benchmarking, processes is not normally the first thing that crops into their head, but processes are very important. So one of the things that came out of our meeting on Wednesday is we deleted some from the peer group, we replaced some, and we moved one from the aspirant to the peer after we had considered the data points again. And an interesting thing that came up was when we're looking at an aspirant, there's still people who are very much like us, but they're doing a better job in certain respects. So maybe their retention rate is higher, their graduation rate is higher. They have a larger endowment. They're getting more, they're writing more grants, they're getting more money in. So there's lots of various things that we're looking at. But the conversation was kind of interesting in that how is it that we can figure out exactly what it is they're doing? And so one of the points I want to make is that the numbers only tell part of the story. And that's true for the peer and aspirant selection as well as the KPIs. Data is just one piece of the puzzle. We have to be able to put the qualitative spin on those numbers. You know, how is it that they're achieving what they're achieving? So one of my colleagues suggested field trips. We need to take field trips to these aspirant institutions to try and figure out what is it that they're doing. So anyways, I'm not gonna read the list off to you. Would you do me a favor and, up the aspirants? So there is overlap still between the some of the peers and some of the aspirants. They are on the current peer and aspirant list. But since that list was generated, our university has changed tremendously. Our enrollment has changed, the type of student that we serve has changed, and a lot of the demographics. Our mission is different, we're in a different sector, we're just not the same institution that we were before. So it's reasonable to understand that there may be some overlap, but there's not a whole lot of overlap. I wanted to go over a little bit more of the methodology so that you had an idea of how we came up with these institutions. We use the information that is in the IPEDS database. That's the data collection that the federal government does, and they provide data on K through 12 and higher ed. Using that database, which is mandatory reporting for all institutions, there are over 7,000 higher ed institutions that are in that database. From there, the group agreed upon several different criteria that would be used to include and exclude certain institutions. So the criteria that we had were the institutions had to be active in the current year. They had to be degree granting. We only looked at public institutions because we only wanted to benchmark to public institutions and not private. They had to be four-year institutions, not two-year, obviously. Open to the public, which means that they are not limited in the type of student that they take, such as military colleges and things of that nature, so those were excluded. We also excluded the historically black colleges and universities. For a Carnegie class, we technically are categorized as a master's large institution, but we really border on that doctoral research university classification, which is the one right above us in terms of degree production. We're not classified as that, but technically we meet the criteria for it. So we looked at both, it's abbreviated DRU schools and master's large institutions. Enrollment was really from 10 to 20,000. We excluded universities who offered law degrees or medical degrees because we do neither of those. As far as setting, the committee decided that setting was very important. So we looked at what's called the urban-centric locale, and that had small cities or suburbs, towns which were on the fringe or distant or remote from a major metropolitan area, and also rural settings that were fringe and distant but not remote. So they're not too far removed per se. We also had an issue with removing some consolidated institutions. We're not the only state that is going through that process and trying to reduce overhead in consolidating institutions. So duplicates or ones that we knew had consolidated were updated and renamed. And then we also had criteria for, they were primarily residential in nature. We're not as much of a commuter school as we used to be. Like I said, we've changed a lot. And so we want to make sure to compare to people who have those similar characteristics. We also looked at diversity of the student population, and because we have a good foothold in online education, we didn't want to benchmark to people that are exclusively online schools or that don't do online at all. So they had to have a nice little mix. There were instances where we overspecified the model a little too much, and when we put in all the factors everyone wanted to see, we ended up with only 4 institutions, which is not enough to benchmark to. So again, it's trial and error. There were multiple iterations of the model. There were lots of discussions, long 2-hour meetings. This is still a work in progress. We are not finished. This last meeting, what we had done is I had sent out and asked for feedback from the deans of colleges and some other areas. And we got some really good feedback, and so what I did was pull the data points for all of those schools, and we discussed those institutions, which actually did result in a change in the numbers. So you see there's a disparity. There's a very large number of peers and not as many aspirants. Again, that's because of where we left off. So there is still work to be done, but this is kind of where we are, and so you can kind of see the different types of institutions. I'm currently writing a long, drawn-out report that entails everything that we've done as a committee, step by step, all of the processes, et cetera. And as soon as our work is complete, that report will be made available to anyone who wants to read. I'm sure we'll post it on the Institutional Effectiveness and Assessment website. But you may want it on Engage West. I don't know. We'll figure that out. So next, quickly, I want to move to KPIs. Yes. So it was, I had every intention of having the dashboard created, but as you heard in the Vice President's presentations, we are currently moving to a new funding formula. And my office has been working very closely with the banner programmers and ITS to what's called validate our historical data. And we had various different metrics that the board is going to use to determine how many dollars we get as an institution. And so it's imperative that we make sure that all of the people that they say we have or we think we have and should be counted in those 30, 60, 90, 120-hour degrees conferred buckets are accurate. And we've had quite the challenge in validating our progression, which is the 30, 60, 90. We're a lot closer, but today's the deadline. So we're working up, we've been working with the board all week. We're definitely getting there, and it looks good. I hope Jim likes the dollars that we get. But yeah, we're really right on the cusp. But unfortunately, due to the imperative of that, I was not able to devote time to creating the scorecard. But what I am going to do is take most of what is up here in spreadsheet format and create nice little dashboards with arrows going up and arrows going down, big ones you can see, unlike small print, to indicate where we've made gains, where we have maybe regressed a little bit, where we have had no change. And if you sort of think of what the vice presidents talked about on each of their scorecards, everything that was on their scorecards is pretty much in this document for the most part in terms of the KPIs. And so a lot of those metrics will be in that little dashboard format. The goal is to get it down to just a 2-pager, so just front and back, very easy to read to see, how we're doing on each of those metrics. So that will be forthcoming in the future. In terms of the KPIs, this is the latest iteration of the document. There are a total of 75 KPIs. One of the things I do want to mention before I go over some of them just briefly is that, again, these are it's not a make or break data point. Indicators really are just that. It's one measure or one indicator of how we're doing in a particular area. So how are we doing in attracting students, keeping students, graduating students, adhering to our Complete College Georgia metrics and how we're supposed to be doing in those areas. And so if you go through each of the strategic imperatives in the strategic plan, you need some sort of indication as to how you're progressing toward meeting your goals that are set forth in that. So one of the things you'll notice on the document that's on the screens is that there are a lot of missing numbers. And that is because some of those numbers will roll up from the divisions who have responsibility for them. The president has set forth certain goals that he wants to see. Each of the vice presidents is going to set forth a particular goal that they want to be at in terms of this. And so, again, it's a work in progress. And as those targets are forwarded to the committee, they'll be inserted in the document, and they'll be tracked by the appropriate person denoted in the far right-hand column. So just for example's sake and due to time, I want everybody to get to their break. For the student success, you'll see that, let me take this off so I can look a little bit. Okay, the very first thing is first-year retention rates. For ease of looking for data pulling, we denoted if it was an IPEDS data point, and retention rates are an IPEDS data point. The 2020 stretch goal, so by the end of the strategic plan, where we want to be on that metric is at 82%. Our goal for this coming year was 73%, and you kind of already heard a little bit about that in the previous presentation. And our actual is about 71%. That actually, the change in the direction is from the previous fiscal year. So 71 is higher than where we were the previous year. So we're really tracking upward on that particular metric. There will be a definition for each metric. IPEDS has a very specific way of defining retention. It's only for your first time, full-time, in college cohort. Doesn't include transfer students. It is very specific as to when they enrolled and if they're considered first time in college. And that is going to come from our office. So the source is basically the office that's responsible for collecting that data, and then there'll be a process for rolling all of the data up so that it is tracked in one central locale. I am currently looking into third-party products to help track all of our progress on KPIs, as well as the products that I'm looking into. this, so you know, and for transparency's sake, right now the top 2 contenders are TaskStream and Weave Online Performance Cloud, which is brand new, not the old Weave. Both allow anyone who has a UWG ID as an employee to sign in and create an action plan and directly link it to the strategic plan. So there's a lot of strategic planning ability. There's ways to link it to budget. You can link all of our wonderful accrediting body standards in there. Trying to not say that word. So we will have a better mechanism than just a spreadsheet for tracking all of this while we're moving forward. For the sake of time, I'm going to move on to, I just had 2 other quick announcements. But again, the vice presidents, their scorecards really align with this document. And we'll try and find a way to make this available to everyone. So I have 2 quick announcements related to assessment. One of them I'm very excited about. We have booked the author of the Assessment Clear and Simple book that everyone here should have gotten a copy of. It's the green and black and white cover book, Dr. Barbara Walvard. She is going to be coming to our campus and holding a day-and-a-half-long assessment workshops with various, breaks it up, so she'll meet with department chairs, she'll meet with business and finance, she'll meet with student services, she'll meet with faculty, you know, so that she can specifically address assessment based on what it is that you do. And she will be here the week after our next LDI, and so that's going to be November 13th and 14th, and don't worry, it's not the week before Thanksgiving. So, but I'm super excited. She's fabulous. She's worked with over 400 institutions in this regard, and so I think we're very lucky that she's willing and excited to come to our campus and hold these workshops for us. The second announcement is that for chairs, I know that Dr. Marrero promised you 2 workshops before October 1. We couldn't book Dr. Walvard until November because she is that popular. So our office will be responsible for providing you with opportunities for that next month in September. So you'll be hearing from us on that. Non-academics, you promised them too? Okay. Workshop Central next month. Thank you.